All right. Now, what we had put in here were two evidentiary questions, and they only require yes or no. Are there any witnesses with personal first-hand knowledge that Patty is a taxpayer, received taxable income, and had an obligation to file a tax return?
Okay. And what was the second question?
Is there any legally admissible evidence against that she's a taxpayer, received taxable income, and had an obligation to file under California law?
Okay. So, in response to the question, I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer, but I'm going to explain you.
Then I don't want to. Okay, just hold on, Desiree. Let me write that down. If you're not going to be responsive to my questions, we probably can't.
I'm going
resolve.
to be.
You just told me you weren't going to give me yes or no.
With the detail, because I'm not going to just give you yes and the fact that we've received information that she has California property and she makes a California mortgage payment. That's what we're basing this assessment on. Now, we're not taking into consideration that she may not have a filing requirement with us. But what happens is, because her bank reports her 1098 information to us, okay, the computer thinks that because we received this 1098 information, we want to verify how she's able to make that mortgage payment. We just want to make sure that she does not have a filing requirement, okay, and that she doesn't receive EDD wages or whatever the facts are. She may be a resident of your state and making income there, and California may just be a secondary property. Then she has no requirement to file. But we don't know that because we don't have any wage information. All we have is the bank's 1098 information that's being reported to us. That's why she's being assessed. Now, my question would be to her is, if she feels that she does not have a filing requirement, well, she very well may not have one. That's what we're basing it off of, is this 1098 mortgage interest information from her bank. That's the only thing. And if she's making that through non-taxable income sources, through, out-of-state income, that's fine. But we also need to verify if that property is a rental at all. And if it's not, then and we can clearly, and she can establish that, then we can close this assessment out. That's the only thing that's being required of her. So are you able to answer any of those questions for her? Because
I just want a yes or no to my two questions, which I'm more than happy to fax to you. But I want a yes or no, and then when you answer yes or no, then we can move on from there and get closer to a resolution of this.
Then yes.
Yes?
In answer to your first question, yes, she does have a requirement.
I didn't. That's not what I asked. My first question was, are there any witnesses with personal knowledge that Patty is a taxpayer, received taxable income, and had an obligation to file under California
well, that
law?
question has 3 in 1. So
Okay.
I'm going to answer, yes, there are witnesses as far as her bank goes.
Wait, that's not what I'm asking you, though. I'm asking.
But you're putting a 3 in 1, so I can't even clearly answer a yes or no answer with that question.
Okay, well then first,
So
yes.
why don't you do this? Why don't you fax me your information? Because you're obviously you're not very knowledgeable in our tax laws. So why don't you give me the information you have?
Okay, take a nice personal shot at me while you're at it there, Desiree. I do appreciate that.
It's just when you call, interviewing me, I'm not your client. So therefore, if you're a legal counsel or a tax professional, because there's a big difference.
Well, yes, there probably is, but I'm not trying to necessarily interview you. I'm asking you questions based on what the Franchise Tax Board has already
but those
put forth.
questions are not relevant to the letter that we sent.
Oh, they're not relevant.
Questions are not relevant because all we need to know is exactly what I told you. I'm not going to answer any yes or no questions because it has nothing to do with your questions are based on far-fetched. We just need to verify how
far-fetched. Let me write this down. So you think that whether there's evidence or witnesses to support the accusations that you've made against Patty, You think that my asking for evidence is far-fetched and not relevant. And then you're going to then wait, and then
yes.
you're going to question me on my expertise.
This is what I'll do because you're obviously not very knowledgeable with our tax laws. Let me take your name and information, and I will actually have our supervisor call you. I'm not comfortable with going on with this conversation. What we deal with on a day-to-day basis is a very, very simple questions. Usually the taxpayer just calls.
You see, there you go again. With your, okay, I don't like the generalization, including my client as a taxpayer, especially when you're telling me it's not relevant.
Well, that's what we refer to people that receive these notices. Okay,
and that's why I'm asking you if you have any witnesses with personal knowledge that he is a taxpayer, instead of just throwing out the accusation like that. And for you to think that's not relevant to whether there's a witness or evidence that is a taxpayer.
Okay, this is what I'll do is I'll take your information and I will have somebody call you back that can answer those questions for you in our legal department. Otherwise, there's no other reason for me to continue with this conversation.
Well, at least you're being honest that, even though these are substantive questions that go right to the accusations and what evidence or lack thereof the Franchise Tax Board may have, at least you're honest in your cavalier, flippant attitude about what most people consider evidence, to be considered important. Most people would say if you make an accusation against somebody, it's probably pretty important that you have witnesses and evidence to verify that. You apparently are under the illusion that because you're a tax agent and you do it all the time, that issues of evidence and witnesses, well, that's just far-fetched and not relevant.
I'm no longer going to have this conversation with you. I actually don't know what else to tell you, to be honest. You're obviously wanting to prove a case to me. I'm not a judge.
I'm not asking you to. What I'm asking, I'm just asking you questions based on what the Franchise Tax Board may.
Why don't you fax me your information? You have my contact information. I will have somebody get back to you that can answer your yes or no questions in our legal department. Because this is getting it's far off from what I should be handling.
It's only far off from what you typically do, because you typically don't give. Apparently, you don't give any.
We typically don't have legal professionals calling and asking us yes or no questions. Typically, we typically have the actual person whom the letter was addressed to calling us and verifying and clearing up their account. But because you are her counsel, we will deal with you. But I personally will not. I cannot. So go ahead and give me your information. If you want, you can put your